Welcome to Where Are They Now? We reach into the archives of Lenape, Shawnee, Cherokee, and Seneca high schools and invite selected alumni to share memories and fill us in on their career paths after commencement. Since Lenape's first graduating class in 1961, Shawnee's in 1972, Cherokee's in 1978, and Seneca's in 2005, over 68,000 individuals have received diplomas from these four schools. Here now is your host, DJ Dini.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Where Are They Now? Today, we'll be reconnecting with an alumni who graduated from Lenape High School in 2000. Kristin Bender-Waddington and her twin sister, Erin Bender-Pitts, who are founders and creative partners of The Label Collective, a graphic design and marketing studio in Austin, Texas. During the first half of our show, we will be speaking with Kristin. Welcome to the show, Kristin.
Hi, thank you. Nice to be here.
We're going to talk about your time in high school and then come out to where you are now in Austin, Texas. Starting in Lenape High School, you graduated in 2000. Tell me a little bit about what you remember from high school.
Oh gosh, well, we entered Lenape High School, my sister and I, actually as newbies. We moved from Cherokee to Lenape, so we didn't quite know everybody. And I remember high school being a period of reinvention for me, at least. It was meeting a bunch of new friends, getting involved in a lot of new things. And I really spent my 4 years at Lenape trying to do everything I could to get as most experience as possible, or the most experience as possible, as I was there. Was heavily active in choir, in tennis, in a little bit of the musicals, in some of the homecoming and hall decorations. I did some stints with the Laureate and with the Smoke Signal, and was part of Art Honor Society and National Honor Society. So I kept pretty busy while I was there in addition to my studies.
Yeah, it sounds like you definitely did a lot of activities. Tell me about some of the teachers that you had. Mrs. Rolnick, an art teacher for you, had an effect on your life. Tell me about her.
Yeah, so I loved my classes with Mrs. Rolnick because it kind of felt like a sanctuary from the rest of the busy day. So much that I believe I had her for 2 or 3 years of my 4 years at Lenape, and would often look forward to that class the most just because it wasn't the usual study that you usually did. It was something that I could just involve myself in and kind of get away from everything.
How about Mr. Traub? Tell me about him.
Oh gosh, I love Mr. Traub. He was somebody who encouraged you no matter how you felt singing or getting up in front of a group. He was somebody who made you feel really, really at ease with it. And coming from a show choir background in middle school, the transition to chorus and girls ensemble and concert choir was really, really easy for me. But coming into the new school at that point in time was a little difficult. And he was just one of those people that had an impression and put a bright spot in your day. And I know that others around me felt that too.
Two science teachers, Kate DeSantis and Mr. Jim Hessler. Tell me about them.
So Mrs. DeSantis really was somebody who I would talk to after class about things and was a little bit more of a mentor for me in my 9th grade year. And she really made science fun. Mr. Hessler also made physics really, really interesting when it could be, in fact, boring. I remember his basically his kindergarten rules that he put on his board next to the front of the classroom, reminding us to just be good people to each other. And I think the humor that he used in his classes brought some levity to something that I found otherwise a little bit unexciting. It was fun.
And Mr. Tortorelli.
Mr. Tortorelli, I would say that he encouraged me to write when I didn't think I was a good writer. And he made me think, I mean, looking back on all of the things that I wrote, I think he pushed me to the point where I had confidence in writing and confidence in being that person to be able to voice something that was inside of me. So he really brought the creative voice out of me.
Now, you did a lot of different things in high school, a broad range. Was there anything in particular that narrowed down what you wanted to do after high school while you were there, or were you sort of undecided as you approached your junior and senior years?
So I would say that they certainly had an influence When I was in junior year of high school, I started learning to hand code websites on my own. And I do think it was partially due to the fact, that I had the art experience and some of the creative background in some of those experiences. But mainly, I would say that it was just my own self-interest in junior year to go out and do that. I knew a few of my friends were also hand coding their own websites, so it was really interesting to me. And that was the year I figured out that if I could get paid making stuff that could actually be out there, not in the realm of fine art, but in the realm of design, that was something I really wanted to do. So that really drove my decision between junior and senior year to pursue art schools versus a standard college route.
So you knew what you wanted to do going into your senior year, which is a huge advantage. Tell me about the decision process for where you wanted to go to school and what went into that.
So my sister and I actually applied to the same colleges. We had decided that we wanted to try to go to the same school if we could because both of us were pursuing creative paths. So we applied to Moore College of Art and Design. We applied to Syracuse, and we applied to Maryland Institute College of Art. We visited Moore College, and we liked it, but we weren't exactly as impressed with the direction that the graphic design curriculum was going in that college. So we went to Syracuse and visited there, and their program was not as robust as we would have liked it to be. And it also was a bit farther away than we wanted to be from all of our friends. So my sister and I both landed on Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, and we have not looked back since.
Well, that's an interesting dynamic because luckily it worked out for you, but what if you guys didn't agree? You know what I mean? Like you guys were deciding together, but you happened to both pick exactly the same thing. What went into, was there ever a clash as far as what you guys thought?
No, not really. I feel like the decision was pretty easy. My sister and I have always been really close, so it wasn't that hard of a decision to make.
Well, it's good that it worked out and you guys were able to pick pretty quickly. So take me to college and kind of some of your experiences there, whether it would be internships or co-ops or, what kind of experiences did you get while you were in Maryland?
So I started out, as all art schools do, with a foundation year of classes and ended up with my foundation year doing painting, drawing, sculpture, photography, a bunch of different directions to go. And they really want you to explore your creative talents and see if where you decide to major is where you want to be. So after that, I still decided I wanted to be in graphic design and continue with the graphic design curriculum there, and gained a Bachelor of Fine Arts in graphic design after 4 years there. I was involved in student affairs. I was also involved in the admissions department. I was one of those people who gave the college tours around campus, and you learn a lot about your campus that way. I worked at the Inner Harbor in Baltimore for 2 years to also help pay for college. So still remained pretty busy while I was in school in Baltimore. But ultimately, I look back on those days and they were a lot of hard days, but they were well worth it.
Now, did you guys have a lot of the same classes together? Were you always together, pretty much, setting the path for your future together?
Some of the courses, yes, but other courses, no. She actually Erin decided to pursue an interior design path when she went there and then ended up in graphic design. So even with the foundation courses, we both started off at different points in our experience there. We ended up in some of the same electives, but ultimately chose different classes just due to different timing. We both had different schedules at that point, and it just ended up continuing that way through college.
Okay, now as you approach your senior year, anybody that's gone to college and realizes it gets a little stressful toward the end, like do I have a job lined up? Do I have anything ready to go? How did that work out for you?
I actually went and cold turkey went to a few agencies in the Philadelphia area and just dropped off my portfolio, my resume, and went to speak directly to their creative director and got my foot in the door with a few of them and ended up with an internship the summer in between junior and summer year of college, which ultimately got me my first position out of college. It wasn't an immediate position. It actually ended up coming my way about 6 months later. So I spent some time living at home, finding some jobs to start raising some money so I could rent an apartment and stuff like that. But was fortunate enough to have that position come my way shortly thereafter.
So what was the longest position that you held before starting the company you are now?
So it was kind of equally divided. I spent 5 years at the agency that I interned with, and I got to a point where I'd moved far enough up the ladder where either my boss had to quit or the owner of the company had to quit. It was a small company, and although we were doing great things, I just realized that there was no more room for growth. So at that point in my life, it was a great time to just jump off and go do something that didn't have any ties. So my sister had moved to Austin, Texas in 2004, and I wanted to see how it was going down there. It was still continuing to be talked about as one of the great design areas to go pursue a career in. And with a carload of stuff and a few $100s to my name, I went down there and fortunately had my sister there to stay with for a few months. And within about a month or so, had a full-time job at a global ad agency, and within 3 months had my own apartment, and really got a running start when I got to Austin.
So I'm sorry, how did you go from that to deciding to start up your own company? Was there anything in between, or did one go right into the other?
Yeah, so I spent a little over 5 years in the ad agency, in the global ad agency. And there was a certain point where I've been through enough layoffs and enough role shifts, and between that and just wanting a little bit more creative freedom to do the things that I wanted to do, we had started talking about it, my sister and I, in 2012, when we wanted to do this. We had joked about it. We said, oh, we could be Bender and Bender and start our own firm, but we actually didn't go into it thinking that starting our own company was going to be a reality. And there was just a moment in 2012 where that clicked. And we said, you know what, we can do this. She was at a point where she was able to start the company. I was still in my agency job, and we just decided to go for it.
All right, so now you started up. Tell us about that. What do you guys do? How was it getting off the ground? Tell us about how all that went.
So in 2012, she was at a point where her company let her go. They were closing the office. They offered her a job offer somewhere else, but she didn't want to relocate. So she started doing freelance work to start up the company, and quickly found there was a lot of contract work happening in Austin. So about that time is when we decided, you know what, we're going to form an LLC behind this. We're going to make it an official company. And we just decided to go for it from there. So she was the main person running the company for about 2 years until I decided to jump on full time. And we really were fortunate. She was president of the AIGA Austin chapter here for 2 years, and she made a lot of connections through that organization. So it was really easy for her to start finding projects to kick off our business and to find work. Fortunately, when I jumped from my agency role, it was at a point in time where she really needed me to start taking some of the work off her plate because we already had enough going on. So it felt, it wasn't easy, but it felt like a natural progression when I jumped, just kind of dove into it and took over. And we've been steadily growing ever since.
Now, what is the hardest part about your job?
Well, there are things that I know that I am not strong at doing. And as a business owner, you have to do those things. There's nobody else to do them for you. So really just trying to find the time and the bandwidth to learn everything that I normally would not be doing. Mostly like operations and financial stuff. You're going through this thinking, oh, I'm just going to be creative and I'm going to do all these really good looking designs and put my work out there. But in the back end, when you're an agency, you have somebody else doing that for you. And when you're in your own business, you have to do everything. So I think just adjusting to that was the hardest part of creating our own business.
And what's your favorite part of your job?
I love the relationships that we build with people. That was something that was missing out of the global agency role for me, was being able to connect with clients and hear their feedback as they speak it, and really have again a relationship with them. A lot of them have become friends of ours. It's not just a very siloed relationship where they're the client and we're the agency. I feel like we've made a lot of connections and some great partnerships through that.
So you guys, are you the only two employees, or do you have a staff, or is it, is it just you guys?
We are the core team. We do mainly the creative strategy, and we outsource some other roles to offer a full service agency model to our client partners. So there are about 10 people that we work with on a contract basis. Those people fall in the roles of copywriting, public relations, brand strategy, and development.
Well, you obviously keep very busy with your job. How do you find time to do some of the other things that you like to do? What are some of your hobbies outside of work?
I'm a runner. I have run 9 marathons and soon to be 10th this July. So that's my outlet for all of the stress that owning your own business creates. So I picked that hobby up about 6 years ago and have just stuck with it ever since. And Austin is a big running community, and it's great weather, so it's really easy to do down here. Other than that, I am pretty much a video gamer. I love video games and and escaping that way too. And I also do a lot of reading, and also, of course, hanging out with my family. I have a husband and an 11-year-old stepdaughter. I met my husband about 9 years ago, and we met at work and pretty much hit it off, but things didn't start happening for us until a couple years later, and we've pretty much been inseparable since. He is also in the creative industry world. He is a creative director at a company called NetSpend, headquartered here in Austin. And my 11-year-old stepdaughter, she is really, really smart and intelligent and funny, and I couldn't ask for a better stepdaughter. We have a great relationship, and she's certainly keeping me on my toes these days, for sure.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to meet with us, and we look forward to seeing things from you in the future as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for chatting.
We've been talking to Lenape alum Kristin Bender-Waddington from Lenape's class of 2000. We'll be back with another alumni interview right after this. Hi, welcome back to Where Are They Now? In this half of our show, we will be reconnecting with another Lenape alumni from the class of 2000, Erin Bender-Pitts, who is a founder and creative partner of The Label Collective in Austin, Texas. Welcome to the show, Erin.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. We just spoke with your sister in the first half, so some of the information that I'll be talking to you about, we've heard already, but it can't hurt to repeat. Take us through some of those early years at Lenape High School. Graduated in the year 2000, but you were definitely involved with a lot of things when you were there.
Yeah, so, even though we're twins, we did have some differences and some similarities. During the time I was at Lenape, we became very involved with sports and choir particularly. So, throughout the 4 years, we were involved with Mr. Traub in the choir program. We also played tennis. I did JV tennis and varsity tennis, 2 years on JV and then 1 on varsity, and also played softball for freshman and sophomore year. So we stayed pretty active, but we were also involved with the Honor Society, the Art Honor Society. During my time there, I feel like I got very enriched because I had the experience of being able to take great elective courses, and between those, as we started going through our careers, we started realizing, and both, strangely enough, kind of serendipitously, that we both wanted to pursue art careers. And Mrs. Rolnick, as we had her for a teacher for the last couple of years while we were there, had been a big inspiration. I know with Kristin, she had really driven her down the path for graphic design and made her realize there was a career in graphic design. Whereas, for me, I actually left Lenape expecting to go into an interior design career. So when we ended up both going to MICA in 2000 in our freshman year, I was going down the track of being the more technical one of the two, I suppose. And with our father being an architect, I guess it was somewhat natural that one of us would become a little bit technical. So as we started moving forward into the foundation year at MICA, which is a plethora of art classes. It could be anything from drawing to painting to sculpture to visual effects, everything else that is in between. I started realizing that it really wasn't my thing. And I had an art education course that year where we actually went out into the Baltimore community, started doing education and classes with some of the different grade levels in schools. So we started with kindergarten and went up all the way to 7th grade to talk about how the differences in the evolution of art and how kids draw. It was really a really exciting course, but part of my assignment for that class was actually to create a journal of all the things that we had done, capture with photos, put it together in kind of a diary of the experience. My teacher ended up looking at the book and going, "You're not an interior designer, you're a graphic designer." And I was like, "What?" Because freshman year is a little daunting to some. They may or may not know what they want to do, but it kind of forced me to think a little more about where I wanted my career path to go. So I ended up in freshman year switching my major to graphic design. So as we went to graphic design, we started taking the courses. My track went a little bit different than Kristin's, where Kristin kind of focused on the print design aspect of graphic design. I ended up going into more of the digital space. And as we started going along, I was taking interface courses, I was taking Flash courses, and because there wasn't a ton of web courses at the time, our web courses were in Dreamweaver and, learning straight HTML. So when we graduated, I think that we ended up with two kind of complementary courses and outlines as far as going forward.
Now, taking a few steps back, we went real quick.
Sure.
That's okay.
Yeah.
What we wanted to find out a little bit, when we talked to Kristin, I asked her about picking the college. Said it was relatively agreed upon, mutually. Was it as smooth as she made it sound, or was there any kind of, discussion there as to where you guys really wanted to go?
Not really. I think there was a little bit of that kind of flash in the back of the head that it would be great to go to college with your sister, and it wasn't just a twin thing. But our parents took a very open approach to it, and they told us from the get-go, if you all want to go to different colleges, we completely respect that. If you go to the same college, that's totally fine too. And they left it really up to us. And in the end, after we went through the college process, we both agreed that we liked the same school. So it kind of ended up that way.
Okay, so now that when you're in school, you talked a little bit about early on experiences at freshman year. What about some of the other things you did while you were at college, either internships, co-ops, other things that kind of brought you to where you knew what you wanted to do exactly once graduation was coming?
So we were very busy in college. I ended up being an RA for 2 years and an HA, which is kind of a senior RA level, for an additional year. So for 3 years of my college term, I had some kind of involvement with students and working within the residency programs. I also did work study with the communications department, which was responsible for handling PR and mailing lists and distributions throughout the school, basically communicating to the public what exactly was going on at MICA. But we also, between that, we worked 2 jobs. I had an internship at a small firm in Baltimore. That was a very interesting time to be there. It was right after 9/11, and the job market in Baltimore had kind of gone south, and people weren't hiring as much. So the internship was a lot about just kind of understanding what the job was. There wasn't a ton of work for me to do, but it was getting into more of the business aspect of it, and jumping on webinars and jumping on phone conference calls and kind of getting the feel for what it's like to run a business. And as I look back now, I think that internship actually gave me the most experience in learning how to be client facing with a lot of our clients, being diplomatic about decision making within the business, and really kind of the things that you take for granted when you're in a design program in art. We did have another internship with a small company in New Jersey, and that was kind of the artistic one of the two, where I was doing a lot of clipping past in Illustrator and really diving into the software and going to photo shoots and doing some of the more tactical things. But I feel like both of those, between the two of them, ended up giving me the drive to move forward into the career.
Now, how much did things change in what you did from when you were starting college to when you were getting out into the workforce? Because obviously computers change every day, but as you mentioned, that time there was a lot of development in web, in digital, the medium. So how different was it for you when you actually started as opposed when you were actually going out to do things? Because there had to be drastic changes.
So as we were moving out into the real world, we were kind of at the crux of a lot of that technology. Our college ended up giving us a good run of the basic programs, and most of them, thank goodness, weren't complete shifts in the industry where they would switch software and we'd have to learn something completely new. It was more of an upgrade type thing. But I also feel like we were at the time where everyone else was kind of discovering it at the same time, particularly in the interactive space. We knew there was the internet. We knew there were different challenges. And it was really, I think, starting to come around to that point to where marketing was actually becoming a big deal and design was becoming a big deal online. It wasn't as clear as saying, like, today we can talk about how Apple really changed the design industry for the better and started making people appreciate design. But at that time, it was a little different. Websites were more informative and informational. There wasn't as much creative freedom with the web. And so as we just got out of college, it was really, I think it was a good time to hit, because as I was learning it, we were also learning how to evolve with it. Now, that doesn't say there weren't other programs that didn't change. We left school working on a program called Quark Express, and then by 2 years from then, we were on InDesign for anything print. But I think it was good to kind of evolve with that. I'm kind of a self-starter, and I like to learn on my own and kind of dive in. So I felt like the process was actually good for me to kind of dig into it on my own and get that extra experience.
You bring up an interesting point, because it allowed you to not fall behind, because like you said, everybody was kind of doing it at the same time, which I guess if it was a couple years later, you might have been in that situation. But as far as going into this career, you knew exactly what you wanted to do at that point. So you graduate and you, I guess, relocate immediately?
We graduated in May of 2004. And within 2 months, I had already made the decision to move down to Austin. I went over my spring break and visited Austin. I did some informational interviews with people in the city that I had just found through other connections, whether it be through Lenape or my alma mater, Micah. And it was, again, because it was post 9/11, it was a very interesting time because we didn't know quite what the market was going to be like. So I talked to one person that would say, yeah, there are 6 new places that have opened up and jobs are booming and the creative industry is strong down here and your portfolio looks great. And then I would go the next day to another interview and they'd say, well, I can tell you 6 places that just closed. And by the way, you need to fix your work to make it in the city. So I left with a very kind of curious, wondering if this was the right decision to make. However, the same year that I moved down, How Magazine, which is a design publication, they did an article and featured about the top 3 up-and-coming cities in design, and Austin was one of them, along with, I think it was Madison and San Diego. All relatively small cities, not major cities. And design is a career where if you're in the industry, it's almost a given that you're going to have to be near a city if you're going to be on a large design sphere. It's not one of those things that you can find a lot of in the small towns. So I started looking at the options and I was like, well, Madison's a little too cold, wanted to get away from the cold. And San Diego is out of my price point for being 21 years old. So I had friends that had recommended Austin. And after that trip, I still left with a great feeling about the city and the culture in general down here, and that it was going to be a good fit. So
you didn't have anything set up out of school. You just kind of went and said, hopefully this works out.
Yeah, I always joke that I said, if I can't make it in 2 months, I'll be waiting tables until I get it. But I ended up within 3 weeks having a job down here at a local independent agency called T3. They were very involved with a nonprofit design organization, a national organization called AIGA. And they, between a lot of different connections and networking events that I went to prior to my employment, we ended up connecting and finding a junior level role that was perfect for what I was looking for. It was kind of a hybrid role, more on the production side of things, where we were kind of just executing on work, not as conceptual as I wanted to be, but it was, in hindsight, it was actually the best place I could have started, because now that kind of stuff comes easy to me. It's not a problem at all.
So how long were you there?
I was at T3 for about almost 5 years.
Okay, and then where'd you move on to after that?
The time that I ended up at T3, it was in 2009, so the recession had kind of kicked in again and the economy was going. So I had been laid off there at the time, but I ended up at another even larger agency called Schematic. Now it's called Possible Worldwide. It's part of a larger holding company of agencies around the world. And they were famous for projects doing things like the touch wall at the Cannes Film Festival that year. And being that my background is more on the interactive side, it really made me excited to start working with them and becoming more of a high concept, high level designer, and really expanding on my career more. Okay,
so now you're working in a field that you know you like. What were your aspirations at that point? Did you have any kind of thoughts of doing something on your own, or was that always something that was kind of in the back of your head, or you just kind of were happy with where you were?
So out of college, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because out of college I said, all right, when I get down there, I want to be an art director. And then by a year in, I become an art director, and I go, okay, where now? So after that, I started thinking, okay, well, what's the next step? Okay, I'm going to be a creative director. Within 4 years of being in T3, I was an associate creative director. And as I started going through the process, I was like, okay, what's the next step? I didn't necessarily go directly to starting a business. However, I became very involved with the local AIGA chapter, particularly because of the benefit they gave me from finding my first job to giving us an additional design education that isn't always around for a lot of people. And because of that benefit, I ended up becoming involved on their board. I ended up becoming the president of the Austin chapter for 2 years. And because I enjoyed it so much, and I really valued the aspect and the design quality that they brought to town, and their mission and goals as far as a local nonprofit. And so that really was I think the crux that told me, okay, you know what, you could actually do this on your own. Because I was at that time running a nonprofit and successfully bringing people into the chapter, working with the organization to build events, working with designers to get design projects put through on pro bono. And I think of all the things, everything kind of culminated in the year 2011, 2012, as I was laid off at the second agency at the Possible Worldwide company. I decided, you know what, I've got the connections, I've got the network, I could probably do this on my own. So that was really, as I started going through, I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. The worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to go back into another job and things will be fine. But within 6 months, I think it was also kind of serendipitous that we ended up being at the time where people in Austin really weren't hiring full-time, but they were looking for contract work. And I had been freelance at the time, and a lot of those people, including our largest client with our company now, are still our clients today from my freelance career.
Well, yeah, so how did that work out? I guess your sister talked about it a little bit, but how did that bring her into the fold, and you know, how did that work out as far as getting this up and running?
Sure. So we kind of had a mutual agreement in 2012 that this would be our thing. It started out as, okay, let's do work under DBA. Let's get things going. Let's start putting our name out there. Let's build the website. Let's get the creative together, get our business cards, do everything together. And so my freelance work evolved into actual client work. And so as I started going throughout the year in 2013, I was speaking to her more. And at the time, she was moonlighting a little bit on it because she was still employed full time. I said, Kristin, we could both do this on our own. I have enough work right now where I'm getting overwhelmed. There's probably a good time to jump within the next year or so if you want to. And so as as I was building the business and networking and growing it in the background, she was kind of planning her exit strategy, as we like to say.
So talk about the company specifically. You know, what's your aspects of it? What are some of her aspects of it? And what do you guys do? Who do you do it for? And all that type of thing.
Sure. So the Label Collective is a fully virtual creative studio. So we work out of coffee shops, we work out of home, we work where our clients need us. And we structure ourselves as a full service creative studio for a large number of clients. But initially we started out as a startup and small business client group. And now we're actually evolving into more of the more established startups and small and medium business groups. So we provide, because we have those two different backgrounds, Kristin came from the print world, I came from the web world, we actually have the full gamut of anything that a client could want. The part of our name, the collective part, is that we work with a network of solopreneurs and small LLCs in the area for some of the services that we don't provide. So for things like large copywriting, long form copywriting as we call it, for PR, for website development, because we do get a lot of website requests and we have the background to do the UX, the design, any of the creative portion of it. We can code, but there are people that do it faster. So we like to kind of rely on the experts to bring that in. And so for our client base, what we do is we essentially sell the service as a package. We manage and maintain everything and project manage the project from our side. If we pull in people, they're our partners, they work with us, but the client never has to deal with multiple invoices or multiple contacts, essentially. But everybody gets to be involved in the creative process and gets to collaborate. The idea of this actually stemmed from both of our agency experiences and just realizing that we wanted to be able to be more involved in the creative process and be more involved with the clients as we move forward, and realize that, in kind of what we touched on earlier, the market's changing. We don't need to be in an office to do this kind of work. We can be a little more agile as a small team compared to a shop that may have hundreds and thousands of employees in them. And we can provide that service to people who can't necessarily afford a large ticket agency, but really value the idea of design. And so that's really where our whole idea stemmed from.
Now, is most of your business, your clients, is percentage-wise, I guess, new business as opposed to, I guess, maintaining and kind of, I guess, keeping that same client base? What would you say the breakdown is?
So let's see, the breakdown I would say is probably about 60% clients of over a year to 2 years, and then about 40% new business right now. We just recently kind of changed our internal model, like I had mentioned, that our client base is kind of evolving as we go. It's just basically keeping some of our existing clients in the realm, and they're also our larger clients who have really worked with us. Our longest client is Bazaar Voice, and we've worked with them for almost 4 years now, I think going on 5. And they've been great. They really appreciate our services. We also have a couple different clients who have come back after doing kind of one-off projects with us and realized that we have a broader scope of services and creative that they can actually utilize. And they've kind of grown organically as we move along with our business. But I think our goal is really, from that breakdown, we want to keep it to a lot of established clients. But as our model is growing, I think that number of new business will probably change to a little bit lower percentage. But it's essentially due to the evolution of the type of clients we're taking.
Now, having, I guess, been in business for, over 5 years now, what would you say has been the biggest change in technology? Being involved in any business that involves technology, it's going to be very different from 1 year to the next. But going from like almost 5 years, over 5 years, what has been different, whether it be easier, harder, just different? What has changed?
So it's an interesting conundrum, but the technology of what we do hasn't changed drastically other than the typical updates. What has changed is the client perception of what we do. And so when we first started out, I think a lot of our clients saw us as, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but kind of the execution engine for a lot of their creative and marketing services. we ended up, as we evolved, we started realizing that our industry isn't going to continue to last that way, because as people have the tools online to learn Photoshop, learn Illustrator, learn all the programs we work with, the execution isn't really going to be the big part of it anymore. It's really about the design strategy and the design thinking that goes behind their product. And so we're evolving our services more into kind of a consultation services package as much as it is an execution. And we bundle those together to where we can offer them a full suite of services that allows them to invest in something that is beyond what any other designer could possibly do for them. So for example, I would be doing wireframes in a program called OmniGraffle, and now one of the big online programs is Sketch, because it's a little more open source, and we use Sketch a lot for a lot of our user experience. But aside from that, it's basically been small evolutions of software that have kind of got us through. But really, the perception of how clients see us and what our services are perceived to be has been kind of, and I don't want to say it was easy or hard necessarily, it's just been a challenge to kind of get them to understand what we do differently from another person that can essentially just execute.
Now, technology is supposed to make things easier and everything's supposed to get better. What would you say has been or is the hardest part of your daily job?
I would say the hardest part of my job is actually managing work-life balance. If I had to put it out there, I love what I do, so it's not hard for me to say that I love doing everything in my career. The biggest challenge, I think the hardest thing for me coming into the business was actually just getting the operational part of it down. We're actually in the process right now of making our first hire within the next year, and because of those kind of things, they don't teach you those in school. They teach you the craft and they teach you the ways and structures to be creative, but
so it's the application that you're applying it to the actual business.
Yeah, and it evolves the same way that the software does. It's an ever-changing process. Tax code can change from one year to another, and even by state, which is something we learned with our job. So, there's, I think, more of the operational things are things that we're being forced to learn now, because we are at that point where we're at a growth stage and are kind of evolving it into something different.
So balancing life and work, it's not always the easiest thing. What do you do when you're able to get a little balance going there and have some free time and do those type of things?
Sure. I have a 2-year-old daughter. So toddlers running around while working at home has always been fun. I enjoy running too, but I haven't been doing as much of it lately just because of having focus on the career and the kiddos. We have another one due in July.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So we'll have 2 little kids running around.
Oh, that'll make it much easier having that second.
Oh, well, I become multitasking to the extreme, so it'll make sense. But I think outside of work, I really have a knack for home improvement, even though I haven't actually had the time or energy to really apply it to a lot of things yet. We've always worked on things around the house, and we've tried to keep up on the latest trends. I think aside from that, just getting outdoors when I can, those are kind of the big things. And of course, taking care of my family is kind of priority right now. We're in those young years that go so fast.
Well, you mentioned the home improvement. I'm sure a lot of that goes back to the creative design. So do you think you're kind of, I guess, channeling still some of that from your high school years in those projects?
I think it's kind of my muse in a way, where I now that we have a house of our own, it's become okay, now what can I do with it? It becomes another palette, if you will, in the creative process. That's not the typical computer. And so I like to work with, things hands-on. I'm there, everything with drawing with crayons with my daughter to painting rooms on my own. So it's another way to kind of invest that creativity.
And you mentioned you like to travel as well. Have you been anywhere of note?
In 2008, I took a trip with Habitat for Humanity to Alaska for 2 weeks to help them build homes in the Anchorage community. And that was really an eye-opening experience for me. They taught us a lot about the culture. We actually had a chance to go around and hike on the glaciers while we were there. we got to go and see otters and humpback whales and have the full Alaska experience. Also went to Costa Rica in, I think it was 2011 now. It's been a while. And got to see a little bit of their culture. It was kind of a half work, half fun trip, but got to tour Arenal, which is a volcano in Costa Rica that's been slightly active. We got to zip line between the rainforests and see toucans and all kinds of animals that you would never see anywhere else. I always joke that I've traveled north-south. I haven't really gone across the pond either way yet. So I think that's my next step when I get some time and when the kids are older to travel across to Europe and other places as well.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to do it, and I wish you all the luck in the future.
Absolutely. Great talking to you as well. Thank you.
All right. We've been talking to Lenape alum Erin Bender-Pitts, a founder and creative partner of The Label Collective in Austin, Texas. Thank you for joining us, and please join us next time for more alumni interviews on Where Are They Now?